So, you've decided to break into one of the most secure, highly classified military installations on the planet. Well, congratulations on your terrible life choices. Welcome to Tips to Survive Area 51, where we don't just teach you how to stay alive, we'll help you avoid being vaporized, dissected, or worse, turning into a glowing puddle of goo. You're gonna need more than just tinfoil hats for this one. Whether it's dodging government drones, avoiding glowing sandwiches, or, let's be honest, figuring out which scientist is actually a shape-shifting nightmare, we've got you covered with expert-level tips to keep your molecules intact and your sanity, well, mostly intact. You've made it this far, but remember, in Area 51, it's not just the aliens you need to watch out for. So grab your snacks, keep your eyes on the shadows, and let's get you out of here alive. Maybe. You're not supposed to be here, but since you are, let's make sure you're not the next mystery for the conspiracy forums. Tip 1. Don't pet the alien. You've made it past the perimeter. Congrats. You've outrun the desert patrols, ducked under the radar, and now you're inside Area 51, where all the government's weirdest secrets are stored. You're feeling invincible, adrenaline pumping, and your curiosity is running wild. Then, just as you round a corner, you see it. A creature floating in a containment field, like something straight out of a sci-fi flick. It's small, about the size of a football, with wide, glowing eyes and a soft, pulsating light that makes it look like a living lava lamp. It makes a little cooing sound, like an alien kitten. Cute, right? Wrong. That thing isn't a pet. It's a trap, and it wants you to get closer. Here's where I need you to remember this cardinal rule of Area 51. If it looks cute, glows, or makes a noise that reminds you of anything comforting, run the other way. This place isn't a zoo. It's a research facility, and if something's out of its cage, there's probably a good reason why. Scientists here don't keep glowing space puppies for fun. Every creature here has either been discovered, captured, or, more likely, created to do something horrifying. That little ball of cuteness you're thinking about petting? It's an apex predator from some distant galaxy, or worse, a government experiment gone sideways. That chirping noise? It's either calling for backup or laughing at how easy you're making this. Consider this. Jerry, a guy I used to know, made the same mistake. Jerry was your average conspiracy nut, convinced Area 51 was full of ancient alien tech and free energy machines. He broke in during one of those storm the base fiascos a few years ago. He got farther than most, past the guards, down into the lower levels. And what did he do when he saw an alien curled up in the corner of a lab, glowing softly? Well, Jerry had a soft spot for animals, and that thing looked adorable. So, naturally, he reached out to scratch it behind what he thought were its ears. Jerry doesn't scratch anything anymore. That alien? Not so cute up close. Its skin peeled back like some kind of bioweapon, and bam, Jerry's atoms became soup. And that's just one example. There's a long list of people who saw something cute and thought, why not? And trust me, their obituaries are all equally bizarre. One guy tried to cuddle what he thought was a fluffy alien rabbit. He woke up 3 days later with his internal organs outside his body, but hey, at least the rabbit looked soft. The scientists working here know what these creatures are capable of, and you should trust them on this one. Ever notice how everything is locked up tight with massive warning labels in 6 languages? That's not because they're worried about someone spilling coffee on the glass. Those warning labels are there to stop you from becoming the next human experiment. When you pet an alien, you're basically volunteering for a Darwin Award, but with more tentacles. And even if the creature doesn't immediately melt your face off or turn you into goo, the consequences can be far worse. Some of these aliens, and I'm talking from experience here, are telepathic. You pet them, you're opening a psychic connection. Now that cute little glowing orb knows every one of your secrets, your fears, your desires. And guess what? It's not just keeping that information for itself. Suddenly, you find yourself back in your childhood home, reliving that embarrassing incident at summer camp. Only you're stuck in the memory and can't escape. Now you're their pet. And that's assuming they don't decide to overwrite your mind with something more entertaining. If you're thinking, well, what if it just wants to be friends? Stop right there. Friendships with aliens from Area 51 never end well. Let's say you survive the first encounter without becoming a sentient puddle. Congrats, that's rare. But now this creature thinks you're buddies. It starts following you around, materializing in your house at 3 a.m., making that weird cooing noise you once thought was cute, but now keeps you awake at night. Next thing you know, you're waking up in the middle of the Mojave Desert, wearing nothing but your socks, and your friend is nowhere to be found. Did it take you for a joyride? Did it probe you? You'll never know, because by then you'll have bigger problems, like trying to explain to your family why you're terrified of nightlights. Bottom line, Area 51 is not a petting zoo. If something looks like it's from a Pixar movie, stay away. In fact, stay far, far away. This place is designed to mess with your instincts, make you think you've found something safe, something familiar. But nothing here is what it seems. That creature isn't a lost alien looking for a friend. It's a predator, an experiment, or worse, bait. And you? You're just the next curious fool it lures in. So next time you find yourself face to face with something glowing and adorable, just remember Jerry and keep your hands to yourself. Because the only thing worse than becoming alien soup is becoming alien bait. Tip 2. Avoid the unmarked doors. Congratulations. You've made it deeper into Area 51, past the guards, the cameras, and probably some form of top-secret tech that could fry your brain faster than you can say classified. You're feeling pretty good about yourself. Maybe even a little cocky. You see rows of doors, all neatly labeled with cryptic titles like Containment Lab 12 or High-Level Clearance Required, and you wisely decide to give those a pass. But then, in the corner of your eye, you spot something else. An unmarked door. No labels, no "Do Not Enter" sign. Just a door. It seems almost too inviting, doesn't it? Like it's waiting for you to open it. Let me stop you right there. If a door in Area 51 doesn't have a label, there's probably a reason for that. And that reason is usually something that involves screaming, gibbering terror, and possibly losing your humanity. See, in a place like Area 51, everything that's dangerous, like turn your bones into jelly, dangerous, gets locked up tight and clearly labeled. If there's a door with nothing on it, that means one of two things. Either it's so horrifying they don't want anyone to accidentally find it, or they tried putting a label on it once, and whatever's behind that door made sure there wasn't going to be a second attempt. Now, you're probably thinking, but maybe it's just a janitor's closet. Trust me, it's not. There are no janitors in Area 51. No one's mopping the floors here. That's what the containment drones are for. So, if there's a door with no sign, no keypad, no flashing lights, nothing, that's not a shortcut to the break room. That's a portal to a place you don't want to go. Metaphorically, dimensionally, or both. Let's take a little walk down memory lane, shall we? A guy named Hank, ex-military, real gung-ho, managed to sneak into Area 51 during a high-level security breach a few years back. Hank thought he was smart. He knew to avoid the obvious dangers, like containment units or rooms labeled biohazard. So when he saw an unmarked door, he figured it was his lucky day. Probably thought it led to a storage room, or maybe even some cool alien tech he could snag as a souvenir. What Hank didn't realize is that doors in Area 51 aren't like doors anywhere else. They don't just open to rooms. They can open to whole realities. Hank opens the door, steps inside, and poof, Hank's gone. And I don't mean he got zapped by a laser or sucked into a black hole. I mean he just ceased to exist. No screams, no alarms. 1 second he was there, the next he wasn't. We later found his security footage. The door closed behind him, and for a split second, it looked like his shadow stretched, unnaturally so, across the wall. Then, silence. Nothing. The footage glitched out, and that was the last anyone ever saw of Hank. The best theory? The door wasn't just a door. It was a tear in reality. Hank probably walked into a dimension where time, space, and logic don't apply. Best case, Hank's having a very confusing eternity. Worst case, He's been erased from existence. His atoms scattered across some alien plane of existence. Now let's say the unmarked door doesn't lead to a dimension where Hank's enjoying a very long vacation. Maybe it's just the entrance to a forgotten lab, right? Big deal. You walk in, and boom. You find some dusty old equipment and maybe a weird stench in the air. But wait, what's that on the floor? A strange, pulsating mass, like a pile of raw meat that's breathing. Oh, that's just an experiment the scientists abandoned when it got out of hand. Nothing to worry about. Except, of course, for the fact that it's growing. It notices you. Slowly, almost curiously, the mass starts to inch toward you, and you realize that every unmarked door leads to something that wasn't meant to be seen again. That's the real reason there's no label. Because no one ever expected to go back in there. Except you, genius. And let's not forget about the temporal anomalies. One guy, Tommy, we called him. He wandered into an unmarked door about a decade ago. When he came back out, it was only 5 minutes later for us. But for him, it had been 40 years. He hadn't aged a day, but the look in his eyes said everything. The poor guy couldn't handle it. 1 minute, he's a conspiracy junkie, breaking into Area 51 to prove the government's hiding aliens. The next, he's had a lifetime's worth of experiences crammed into a few minutes. He couldn't even speak by the end of it. Just stared off into the distance, muttering about time loops and alternate versions of himself. So, here's the moral of the story. Area 51 doesn't mess around, and neither should you. If you see a door with no sign, do not open it. Do not peek inside. Do not even think about touching the handle. It might look harmless, but so does a black hole until you're too close to escape its pull. And that's what these doors are. Black holes of mystery, where the only certainty is that you won't like what's on the other side. Maybe you'll walk into an interdimensional portal. Maybe you'll find an alien hive that the scientists lost track of back in 1973. Or maybe, just maybe, you'll step into a lab where time folds in on itself. And you'll come out aged 500 years. Or worse, not at all. So be smart. Stick to the labeled rooms, even if they say top secret or biohazard. At least those rooms have rules. The unmarked doors, they don't play by the same game. Walk away while you still can. Tip 3. Bring your own snacks. So you've finally made it inside Area 51. You've dodged the guards, evaded the drones, and avoided turning into goo by not petting anything with too many eyes. You're feeling pretty good about yourself, maybe even a little cocky. But then it hits you. Hunger. You haven't eaten in hours, and suddenly, you're starving. Good news. You're in a government facility, right? There's bound to be a break room somewhere with vending machines, or at the very least some stale coffee and donuts. Maybe you'll find a cafeteria serving up military-grade mashed potatoes and overcooked Salisbury steak. But here's where things take a turn for the worse. Area 51 food isn't meant for humans. Sure, you might find a vending machine tucked away in a corner. But before you grab that sandwich wrapped in suspiciously non-biodegradable plastic, take a good, long look at it. Does it glow faintly? Is the expiration date written in a language you can't quite place? Something with too many consonants and not enough vowels? Does it smell metallic? That's not a deluxe ham and cheese. That's a science experiment wrapped in bread. And it's probably going to do things to your digestive system that'll make an alien probe seem like a back rub. You see, Area 51 isn't just a secret base. It's also a testing ground for things that should never see the light of day, including food. What you think is a pre-packaged snack could actually be a meal developed for interstellar travelers, non-human travelers. The government has been working on space nutrition for decades, and trust me, their methods are a little unconventional. You know those protein bars you see in astronaut documentaries? Now imagine the alien version of that. Packed with nutrients, sure, but not for humans. You'll be lucky if your skin doesn't turn a permanent shade of green after a single bite. Let me tell you about Gary. Gary was one of those guys who thought he could handle anything. He was a conspiracy theorist, sure, but he was also an adrenaline junkie. Breaking into Area 51 wasn't just about proving the existence of aliens for him. It was about the experience. So when Gary found the break room, he wasn't exactly picky. He was hungry. And there, on a shelf, was what looked like an ordinary sandwich. It didn't smell bad. Well, not too bad. So he figured, why not? A sandwich is a sandwich, right? Wrong. That sandwich was some sort of extraterrestrial cuisine that probably worked wonders for the digestive system of a being from Zeta Reticuli. But for poor Gary? Let's just say what happened to Gary was something out of a horror movie. First, his skin started itching, then it turned blue, like full-on Smurf blue. Then came the sweating. But it wasn't sweat, not really. It was some kind of alien ooze, seeping out of his pores, pooling on the floor around him. By the time he realized the sandwich might have been a bad idea, Gary was already beyond help. Rumor has it he's still in Area 51, not as a prisoner, but as part of a study. They're trying to figure out how his DNA is reacting to the alien nutrients. The good news? He's not dead. The bad news? He's not really human anymore either. Now, if you're thinking, I'll just stick to the drinks, think again. That bottle of water? Not water. It's some kind of liquid nutrient supplement designed for species that don't process hydration the way we do. Drink it, and you might find yourself feeling different. Maybe your tongue starts tingling, or your vision gets weirdly sharp, like you can suddenly see ultraviolet light. Sure, that might sound cool for a few minutes, but trust me, when you wake up 3 days later, strapped to a gurney in a lab, missing a kidney, and with your blood glowing like a rave stick, you'll realize you made a terrible, terrible mistake. And don't even think about the coffee. That sludge they serve in the break rooms, it's technically coffee, but it's been engineered to work for soldiers who've been augmented with alien DNA. You, on the other hand, are just a regular person, and that regular person is about to have the most energizing experience of their life. By which I mean, you'll be vibrating so hard, you might phase through solid objects. You think you need a caffeine boost? Not this kind. You'll be wide awake for the next 72 hours, your heart pounding like a jackhammer, and hallucinating that every shadow is an interdimensional being trying to crawl inside your skull. Fun times. Your best bet? Bring your own snacks. Sure, it might feel a little ridiculous to be toting a granola bar or PB&J when you're infiltrating one of the world's most secretive facilities, but trust me, it's worth it. A homemade sandwich is not going to rewrite your DNA or cause spontaneous telekinesis. Pack light, but pack smart. Protein bars, trail mix, bottled water, anything you can 100% confirm was made for human consumption. Because in Area 51, the line between food and weaponized alien goo is really blurry, and it's better to be safe than, well, Gary. So, when your stomach starts growling, and you're tempted by that glowing sandwich sitting all alone in the break room fridge, just remember, nothing in Area 51 is safe, not even the snacks. Take a bite, and you might end up on the menu yourself. Bring your own food. Stay human. Tip 4. Stick to the shadows. So, you've made it past the guard towers, avoided becoming alien chow, and managed to keep your hands off the glowing snacks. Congrats, you're doing great. But now you're in the belly of the beast, inside Area 51, where things get tricky. You're not the only one sneaking around. The place is crawling with guards, drones, and, well, let's just call them enhanced personnel. If you think you're clever, they're one step ahead, which means you need to be 2 steps behind. Translation: stick to the shadows. This isn't some low-rent spy flick where you can duck behind a conveniently placed crate and wait for the coast to clear. Area 51 is a fortress of surveillance. Cameras, motion sensors, infrared scanners. And oh yeah, guards who've been genetically modified. Yep, you heard that right. These aren't your standard mall cops with a bad attitude and a flashlight. No, these guys have been upgraded. Faster, stronger, and way more dangerous than anything you've ever dealt with. And they're not just looking for trespassers. They're hunting for you. Take Chuck, for example. Chuck thought he was smooth. Chuck was wrong. He figured as long as he stayed quiet and kept out of sight, he'd be fine. He even brought a black hoodie, like this was a heist movie, and not a top-secret government facility. Chuck didn't know about the cameras, or the drones, or the enhanced guards. One minute he's sneaking through a hallway, congratulating himself on how stealthy he's being. The next, bam! Chuck's face down on the floor with 3 guards standing over him, one of whom had moved so fast that Chuck didn't even have time to register what hit him. the last thing Chuck remembered before blacking out? The eerie red glow from the guard's eyes. That's right. They have upgrades. These guards have been augmented with alien tech, and they see things you can't. Infrared vision? Check. Superhuman reflexes? Double check. And that eerie feeling you get when someone's watching you from the shadows? That's not paranoia. They're using motion detectors, heat sensors, and who knows what kind of mind-reading tech the government's cooking up in those labs. If you so much as sneeze in the wrong direction, they'll know about it. Hell, they'll probably know before you do. So, unless you want to end up like Chuck, plastered to the floor with enhanced super soldiers breathing down your neck, you need to be smarter. Much smarter. Step 1. Stay low and stay quiet. No unnecessary noise. You drop something, it better be your pride, because that's the only thing that won't get you caught. If you hear a drone buzzing in the distance, find the nearest shadow and blend into it, like your life depends on it. Because it does. Drones in Area 51 aren't your standard flying nuisances that deliver packages. These things can scan for movement, heat signatures, and possibly even your thoughts. I'm not saying they're mind readers, but then again, this is Area 51. If you hear buzzing and think, I need to hide, that drone might just pick up on your panic. Rule of thumb, don't think, just move. Step 2. Never, and I mean never, make eye contact with the guards. It might sound silly, but trust me, these guys are trained to lock onto anything that so much as glances their way. Eye contact is like sending a signal flare saying, "Here I am, come grab me." Keep your head down, your eyes on the floor, and your body pressed against the wall. You're not here to be a hero. You're here to survive. And don't even think about using flashlights. Shadows are your best friend in this place. But you need to respect the darkness. No one's impressed with your tactical flashlight with 12,000 lumens. In Area 51, light attracts attention, and attention gets you caught, or worse. The place has been designed to keep the weird stuff in, and even weirder people out. So if you go wandering around with a flashlight, you might as well put on a neon sign that says, "I have no idea what I'm doing. Please abduct me." Now, you might be thinking, but what if I get cornered? What if I can't find a shadow to hide in? Well, in that case, it's time to get creative. Area 51 is full of tight spaces, and you can bet your ass you'll need to squeeze into a few. Vents, under desks, behind crates, anywhere you can fold yourself up into a ball and disappear. And if you hear footsteps coming your way, hold your breath and pray those enhanced guards are too busy scanning for aliens to notice a trembling pile of human in the corner. Look, I'm not going to sugarcoat it. If you get spotted, you're done for. These guards don't hesitate. They won't politely ask you what you're doing there. They won't even give you a chance to lie about how you were just looking for the bathroom. The second they lay eyes on you, it's game over. So your best bet? Don't get seen in the first place. Trust the shadows. Move like you're a ghost. Stick to the corners, stay out of sight, and whatever you do, don't draw attention to yourself. You're not a hero. You're prey. Area 51 is the predator, and it's always watching. Tip 5. Ignore the voices. You've made it farther than most. You've dodged the augmented guards, avoided the glowing sandwiches, and stayed tucked away in the shadows like a professional. You're starting to feel pretty confident, maybe even a little invincible. But here's where things start to get weird. And by weird, I mean psychologically unraveling levels of weird. Because in Area 51, there's one more challenge that most people aren't ready for. The voices. You're creeping down a corridor, heart pounding in your chest when you hear it. At first, it's a whisper. Quiet, almost like a breeze passing by your ear. "Hey," it says. You freeze, eyes darting around. No one's there. You shake it off. Must have been your imagination. You've been on edge for hours now, and your mind's playing tricks on you. But then you hear it again, this time clearer. "Come here. I can help you. Do yourself a favor, ignore it. I know it sounds tempting. After all, you've made it this far, and maybe, just maybe, there's someone in this godforsaken facility who knows what's going on. Maybe there's an insider, someone who can guide you through the labyrinth of doom and get you out alive. But trust me on this, the voices aren't real. Or rather, they're not something you want to listen to. See, Area 51 isn't just a physical fortress. It's got layers. And some of those layers? They're psychic. They've been experimenting with mind-bending tech here for decades. Some of it is alien in origin. Some of it is human innovation gone terribly wrong. But the result is the same. Voices in your head that are not your own. You might think you're hearing a guard, or maybe a friendly scientist who wants to help you. You're not. You're hearing something that's trying to lead you deeper into the belly of the beast. And these voices, they know exactly what to say to mess with you. They're designed that way. Think about it. Area 51 is full of alien artifacts, psychic experiments, and who knows what kind of weirdness. You think they haven't tried to weaponize that? The Whispers are part of the defense system. It's a trap, plain and simple. You follow the voice, and suddenly, you're not in control anymore. It's leading you, pulling you in. And once you're in too deep, it's game over. Remember Jenny? Yeah, you don't. Because Jenny didn't make it out. She was one of those overly curious types, the kind of person who hears a mysterious whisper and thinks, I'll just check it out. She figured maybe there was someone else inside Area 51. A fellow explorer, or even one of the staff members who got trapped and needed help. So when she heard a voice calling her name, she didn't run the other way. No, she followed it. Like an idiot. Jenny thought she was onto something big. She heard the voice telling her where to go, guiding her deeper into the facility. The whole time it kept saying things like, I know a way out. Come this way. You're almost there. And Jenny, she bought it. Hook, line, and sinker. She followed those whispers all the way to a sub-level of the building that even the guards don't go to. And guess what? No one's seen her since. Rumor has it she's still down there, wandering the endless corridors, hearing those same voices, but now they're not guiding her. They're laughing, taunting her. Some say she's trapped in a psychic loop, forced to relive the same moment over and over, never finding a way out. Others think she's been absorbed into whatever the hell is behind those voices, her mind hijacked, her body nothing more than a puppet. Either way, Jenny's not coming back, and you could end up just like her if you aren't careful. So, how do you avoid becoming a mind-controlled husk like Jenny? Simple. You ignore the voices. I don't care how real they sound. I don't care if the voice says it's your mom, your best friend, or your childhood pet. You tune it out. Pretend you're at a terrible office party, and someone's trying to sell you on essential oils. Just smile, nod, and get the hell out of there. The trick is, once you hear the voice, don't engage. Don't answer. Don't ask, who's there? That's the worst thing you can do, by the way. Acknowledging it only makes it stronger. Don't even think about it too much. The moment you start entertaining the idea that the voice is real, it starts getting inside your head. And once it's in, good luck getting it out. And here's a pro tip. If the voice starts talking about the lights, you need to run. Don't even think about it. Just bolt in the opposite direction. I don't know what the lights are exactly, but based on the stories I've heard, it's nothing good. One guy, Tom, said the voice told him to look for the lights in a dark hallway. He did, and, well, let's just say, Tom's eyes don't work the same anymore. He's still got them, sure, but they don't point in the same direction. Bottom line, the voices are a trap. They're part of Area 51's defense system, designed to lure you in, mess with your head, and turn you into something you don't want to be. So when you hear that soft whisper in your ear, promising help or salvation or whatever else sounds tempting in the moment, keep moving. Don't turn around. Don't engage. Ignore the voices, because once you start listening, it's already too late. Tip 6. No flash photography. So, you've made it this far without getting caught by super soldiers, turning into alien soup, or having your mind hijacked by mysterious voices. Impressive. But now, you're faced with another temptation. You're deep inside Area 51, surrounded by the government's juiciest secrets. You're looking at things no one on the outside could ever imagine. Flying saucers? Check. Cryogenic chambers holding who knows what? Oh yeah. Giant tanks filled with green liquid and mysterious twitching shapes inside? You bet. And then it hits you. I should take a picture of this. After all, what's the point of breaking into the world's most secretive military facility if you don't get a selfie in front of a UFO? How else are you going to make your conspiracy theorist friends jealous? You even brought your phone, just for this moment. You unlock it, The camera app pops open, and your finger hovers over the button. Just one snap, right? Stop right there. No flash photography. In fact, no photography of any kind. Don't even think about taking out your phone, unless you're using it as a distraction to throw at an approaching guard. In which case, fair game. But trust me, you don't want to capture any of the weirdness inside Area 51. Why? Well, let's start with the basics. This place is built to not be seen. Anything that happens inside these walls is designed to be kept secret. That means any kind of recording device is going to set off alarms so loud and so terrifying, you'll be wishing the only thing coming after you was a pissed-off security guard. Remember Bob? Bob was one of those guys who thought he could outsmart the system. He brought a whole camera crew with him when he managed to break into Area 51 a few years ago. They were all decked out with high-end equipment, ready to film the biggest expose the world had ever seen. Bob was already planning his documentary, probably thinking up clever titles like Aliens Among Us, or The Truth They Don't Want You to Know. They found the main research lab, started setting up their gear, and hit record. Big mistake. The second that red recording light blinked on, the entire lab lit up with flashing lights, alarms blaring like they were inside a pinball machine. But the alarms weren't the worst part. Oh no, Bob didn't know that Area 51 is rigged with photonic traps. In plain English, the place reacts to cameras like a shark reacts to blood in the water. As soon as they started filming, Bob and his crew found themselves face to face with a security response they didn't even know existed. Drone swarms, lasers that track movement based on infrared flash detection, and, of course, the guards. Bob tried to run, but the guards were already there, and not just the regular ones. These guys were kitted out with some kind of experimental cloaking tech. One second they were invisible, the next they were standing in front of him, ready to haul his entire crew off to the deepest, darkest cell in the facility. Spoiler alert. Bob's documentary never made it to Netflix. You might be thinking, okay, fine, no cameras. But what about my phone? After all, it's not like a few selfies are going to trigger some high-tech death trap, right? Wrong. Dead wrong. For starters, your phone is basically a homing beacon. The second you snap a photo, you're broadcasting your exact location to every surveillance system in the building. Area 51 has technology that could detect a butterfly's heartbeat from 2 miles away. Your phone's camera flash is like waving a neon flag saying, "Hey, I'm right here." And even if you do manage to avoid the guards, drones, and lasers, the photo itself is a problem. You know that saying, some things are better left unseen? Well, that applies here in a very literal sense. There are things inside Area 51 that don't belong in our reality. They don't follow our rules of physics or perception. Sure, your phone might take the picture, but what you capture, it won't stay normal for long. Some of the entities housed here are sensitive to observation. By snapping a photo, you're inviting them into your space. You know how people say photos can capture a person's soul? Well, let's just say some of these things might prefer to trade places with you, in the photo, while you get stuck with whatever's inside. Case in point, a guy named Ricky. He thought he was slick, snapping photos of some alien tech he found in a storage room. No flash, he figured, so no problem, right? Wrong. Ricky got away without setting off the alarms. But the photos he took, they started to change. The images on his phone slowly warped. First, the alien tech seemed to vibrate. Then it looked like the light was bending around it. Eventually, the photos weren't of tech anymore. What he saw was a distorted, shadowy figure creeping toward the camera. And then, the figure wasn't just in the photo. Ricky started seeing it out of the corner of his eye. Everywhere he went, it followed. Needless to say, Ricky's phone didn't last long. He smashed it to pieces, but by then, the damage was done. The figure, still following him. So, no matter how tempting it might be, leave the phone in your pocket. No selfies, no pictures of weird alien artifacts, and definitely no videos of anything you see in here. Trust me, nothing you could capture is worth the consequences. You'll either trigger an alarm that brings down the wrath of every security system in the building, or worse, you'll end up capturing something you can't get rid of. Either way, you'll wish you'd just kept the camera off. Remember, in Area 51, what happens here stays here. No need to document your adventure, especially if you want to make it out alive. Tip 7. Learn to speak alien. All right, so you've made it deep into the heart of Area 51. You've survived the telepathic whispers, the guards who can run faster than you can blink, and resisted the urge to snap a quick selfie in front of the UFO. Good for you. You're basically a legend already. But then, something happens. Maybe you've turned down one too many unmarked hallways. Maybe you've wandered a little too far into the restricted zones. Maybe you've just got bad luck. Either way, you find yourself face to face with an alien. Not a cute little green man, but the real deal. A towering, unknowable being with way too many eyes, tentacles, or limbs that bend in directions they really shouldn't. And here's where you're going to wish you had taken the time to brush up on your intergalactic languages. Now, you're probably thinking, I barely passed high school Spanish. How the hell am I supposed to talk to an alien? But trust me, communication is key. This isn't like bumping into a tourist at the airport and hoping you can both figure out how to mime your way through a conversation. This is an extraterrestrial encounter, and if you don't figure out how to speak its language, fast, you might find yourself on the wrong end of an interdimensional misunderstanding. Worst case, you're the next specimen in their collection. Best case, you get probed. And I'm not talking about a friendly Q&A. Let me tell you about Clint. Clint was one of those guys who thought he had it all figured out. He broke into Area 51 during the infamous Storm the Base event, and somehow actually made it pretty far. Clint had done his research, read all the conspiracy forums, and even learned a few words in Klingon, for reasons that don't bear thinking about. But when Clint rounded a corner and came face to face with what can only be described as a 7-foot-tall, glowing jellyfish with arms, all that preparation went right out the window. Clint tried speaking to it. He really did. But, unfortunately, it turns out that quoting Star Trek at a real alien doesn't get you very far. The alien just stared at him for a moment. Well, as much as something with no eyes can stare. And then things got weird. The air started to hum, like it was charged with static electricity, and Clint said he could feel the alien's thoughts in his brain. Only, the thoughts weren't his own. They were alien. Thoughts about dimensions and timelines and hunger. A lot of hunger. Clint, panicking, tried to scream, but his mouth wouldn't work. His legs wouldn't move. The next thing he knew, he was floating in midair, like the alien was examining him. And when Clint finally regained control of his body, well, let's just say he wasn't exactly the same as he'd been before. His friends noticed he developed an odd glow around him at night, and sometimes mumbled in languages no one recognized in his sleep. And when he woke up, he had no idea where he'd been. So, yeah. If you stumble across an alien while wandering the halls of Area 51, you're going to want to learn how to communicate fast. Here's a crash course. First, body language is key. If the alien's got tentacles, you're probably dealing with something from the Zeta Reticuli system, and they communicate using subtle movements. If it raises a tentacle, don't freak out. It's probably just saying hello, or warning you that you're about to be vaporized. Who's to say? The important thing is to stay calm. Alien beings tend to pick up on emotions, and if you start freaking out, they'll take that as a cue to really freak you out. Second, if the alien starts making strange clicking noises, you might have lucked out. That could mean you're dealing with a species that communicates using a series of clicks and hisses, like a high-tech form of Morse code. Just nod, smile, and try to mimic the sounds without insulting their ancestors or declaring war on their species by accident. You might not understand what they're saying, but showing them that you're making an effort could mean the difference between a friendly encounter and ending up as a new addition to the Area 51 cryogenic freezer. And if, by some miracle, you hear the alien speaking in something that sounds remotely human, congratulations. You've encountered one of the more sophisticated species that's learned to mimic Earth languages. This could go one of two ways. Either the alien is genuinely trying to communicate with you, or it's lulling you into a false sense of security before it does something unpleasant. Either way, play it cool. Respond slowly and clearly. Like, you're talking to someone who's hard of hearing. Keep your sentences short and to the point. Aliens don't have time for small talk. They're probably as confused as you are, so avoid sarcasm. I know, it's tough, but trust me on this. Lastly, here's the golden rule of alien communication. Don't piss it off. You don't know what it can do. Maybe it's friendly, maybe it's just as lost in this facility as you are. Or maybe it's deciding whether or not you taste good, dipped in whatever passes for ketchup in its home world. Don't make any sudden moves, don't shout, and for the love of all that's holy, don't try to take a selfie with it. In conclusion, if you find yourself face to face with an extraterrestrial while wandering through Area 51, stay calm, try to communicate, and, above all, be respectful. You're not in Kansas anymore. Hell, you're not even in Earth anymore, as far as this thing is concerned. Learn the language, whether it's through clicks, gestures, or some unholy telepathic connection, and you might just walk away from the encounter with your sanity intact. Or, end up glowing in the dark like Clint. Tip 8. Don't touch the green goo. You've made it pretty far into Area 51 without getting your brain scrambled, your DNA rewritten, or your body snatched by a creature from another dimension. Congrats. You're practically a legend in the making. But now, you've found yourself in a room that looks like something out of a sci-fi nightmare. There are strange tanks filled with glowing liquids, machines humming with energy that feels wrong, and of course, the floor. It's slick, with a substance that could only be described as green goo. You see it pooling under a busted containment tube, slowly spreading across the floor, dripping from the ceiling in eerie, unnatural patterns. It doesn't smell too bad, kind of like burnt plastic mixed with grass. Weird, but harmless, you think. Maybe it's some kind of coolant for the alien tech. You tell yourself it's probably just some science-y stuff the lab techs forgot to clean up. Don't touch the goo. In fact, don't even go near it. And for the love of all that's holy, don't get it on your shoes. Let me tell you about Stan. Stan was one of those guys who thought that just because something didn't immediately burst into flames or sprout tentacles, it wasn't dangerous. Poor Stan. He stumbled into a room much like the one you're in now. The air was thick with the hum of alien tech, and the floors were slick with that same green goo. Now, Stan was a curious guy. Curious and kind of an idiot. He saw the goo and figured, why not? It wasn't bubbling. It wasn't glowing ominously. And it didn't appear to be moving. That he could tell. So, what does Stan do? He touches it. Big mistake. At first, nothing happened. He poked it, looked at it, even smeared a bit on his glove to get a closer look. Stan thought he was in the clear. But that's the thing about the goo. It doesn't kill you outright. No, the goo likes to take its time. By the time Stan realized something was wrong, it was way too late. His glove, gone. Dissolved into nothing. Then his hands started to tingle. Just a light itch at first, like a mosquito bite. Harmless, right? Wrong. By the time Stan thought to check his hand again, the skin had started to ripple. His fingers began to stretch, then twist, and before he could even scream, they fused together into one long, grotesque appendage. His arm, same deal. It wasn't just melting. It was reforming itself, like it had decided to become something else entirely. Stan ran, or at least he tried to. His legs were still working, but barely. The goo, it turns out, doesn't just stick to the surface. It spreads. Once it touches you, it's not just on your skin, it's in your body. And Stan? Well, let's just say, the goo wasn't too picky about what parts of him it wanted to change. By the time he made it to the next room, Stan wasn't Stan anymore. He was something else. Something that moved wrong. Something that looked like a half-melted wax figure that tried to stand up, but never quite figured out how to be human again. Last I heard, Stan's still wandering the lower levels, dripping, stretching, and occasionally letting out a garbled scream that no one understands. Some say he's still alive in there, trapped inside whatever his body has become. Others think the goo has taken over completely, and Stan's just a walking, oozing shell of whatever alien substance decided to make him its host. So, yeah, Don't touch the goo. You're probably wondering, what is the green goo? Well, no one's exactly sure. It's likely some kind of byproduct from an alien species that doesn't follow our rules of biology or physics. It could be a discarded experiment, a leftover bit of nanotechnology, or the result of a fusion reaction gone terribly wrong. But here's what we do know. The goo isn't passive. It's alive. Or at least, alive enough to adapt to whatever it comes in contact with. You think you're safe just because you're wearing gloves? Think again. The goo doesn't care about protective gear. It'll seep into your suit, under your clothes, and start bonding with your cells faster than you can say, "I'm never washing this off." If you see the goo moving on its own, back away immediately. If it bubbles, drips, or even so much as quivers in your direction, it's probably already aware of you. The trick is to stay calm and stay out of its reach. And by reach, I mean anywhere within a 10-foot radius. The goo doesn't need to touch you to affect you. Sometimes it sends out spores, tiny, invisible particles that get into the air. Once you inhale them, well, let's just say you'll be coughing up more than phlegm in a few minutes. Here's the rule. If it's green, wet, and glowing, you leave it the hell alone. I don't care how curious you are, how tempting it might be to poke at it with a stick, or how cool you think it would be to tell your friends that you found an alien substance. Curiosity didn't just kill the cat. It turned Stan into a walking puddle of goo. So, when you see that green substance oozing across the floor, resist the urge to investigate. Don't sniff it, don't step in it, and definitely don't try to touch it. You're not a scientist, and even if you were, this isn't something you want to play around with. Keep your distance, move quickly, and leave the goo to do whatever horrifying alien thing it was designed to do. Trust me, the only thing worse than a curious mind is a curious mind with goo all over it. In short, don't touch the goo. Tip 9. Watch your back and your front. Alright, you've made it this far into Area 51 without getting turned into goo, vaporized by lasers, or trapped in some interdimensional loop where time doesn't exist. You're practically a legend, but don't get cocky. If there's one thing you need to remember while navigating these secret halls, it's this. Danger doesn't just come from one direction. In Area 51, you need to watch your back and your front at all times. Hell, if you had eyes in the back of your head, that might still not be enough. Let me paint the picture. You're moving down a dark corridor, feeling pretty good about how stealthy you've been. Maybe you've ducked a couple of guards, avoided the goo. Good call, by the way. And even managed to keep those weird voices out of your head. You think you've got a handle on things, but then you hear it. Something behind you. A faint click. Or maybe the sound of footsteps, just soft enough to make you wonder if you're imagining it. You turn around. Nothing. You keep walking, but the hairs on the back of your neck are standing straight up. It's like you can feel something watching you. That's because something is watching you. Let me introduce you to one of Area 51's most terrifying residents, the Stalkers. These aren't the guards or drones you've managed to avoid so far. No, the Stalkers are different. No one knows exactly what they are or where they came from. But the prevailing theory is that they're some sort of hybrid, part alien, part something else. They move quietly, almost like shadows, and they're fast. Really fast. Oh, and did I mention they can climb walls? Yeah. Picture a spider, mixed with a panther and a dash of nightmare fuel, and you'll start to get the idea. Stalkers don't show up on the security cameras. The guards don't even seem to notice them, but you will. You'll feel them before you see them, like a cold breeze that suddenly hits your neck, or that prickling sensation that tells you something's very, very wrong. And here's the kicker. They don't always attack from behind. Stalkers like to play with their food. They'll follow you, creeping just out of sight, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Sometimes, they'll get right in front of you, blending into the shadows so well you don't even notice them until it's too late. Take Paul, for instance. Paul was one of those overly confident types. He'd broken into Area 51 thinking he'd find some cool alien tech and be out in time for dinner. He made it further than most, too. Didn't get caught by the guards, didn't mess with any of the weird experiments. But Paul didn't follow the most important rule. Watch your back. He kept moving forward, eyes on the prize, too focused on what was ahead to notice what was creeping behind him. The first time he heard the stalker, he brushed it off. Probably just the wind, he thought. Paul may have been an NPC. The second time, he turned around, flashlight in hand, but didn't see anything. But the third time, it was right in front of him. He turned the corner, and there it was, clinging to the ceiling like some unholy mix of a lizard and a spider. Long, thin limbs, impossibly sharp claws, and eyes. Too many eyes, all focused on Paul. The thing didn't move at first. It just watched him, tilting its head like it was trying to figure out what, exactly, it wanted to do with him. Paul froze. Big mistake. The stalker dropped from the ceiling in the blink of an eye, landing silently in front of him. And then, with a flick of its claws, it was over. No scream. No struggle. Just Paul, gone in an instant. Here's what you need to understand about Area 51. The things in here aren't just contained in tanks or behind locked doors. Some of them are loose. And the stalkers? They're the worst of the bunch. They move through the facility like ghosts, always watching, always waiting. They don't care about alarms or guards. They're hunters. And you're the prey. So how do you survive? Simple. Never. Stop. Moving. You might think that stopping to catch your breath or take a look around is smart, but you're wrong. The moment you stop, they get closer. The second you let your guard down, that's when they strike. Keep your head on a swivel, stay alert, and always assume you're being followed. Because you probably are. And here's a pro tip. If you think you saw something out of the corner of your eye, you did. Don't wait for confirmation. Don't second guess yourself. The stalkers are fast. Faster than you. And if you hesitate, even for a second, you're done for. They love to sneak up on you from angles you wouldn't expect. Think you're safe because you've got your back against the wall? Think again. Stalkers can come from above, too. That's right. These things can crawl on the ceiling like some kind of alien nightmare ninja. Another important thing to remember? Stalkers love the dark. If you find yourself in a poorly lit hallway or a shadowy room, you might as well be serving yourself up on a silver platter. Stay in the light, but don't rely on flashlights too much. The beam might help you see, but it'll also make you a target. Best bet? Stick to areas with ambient light. Stay alert, and keep your back against something solid when possible. In conclusion, trust your instincts. If something feels off, it probably is. You're not paranoid. Well, maybe a little, but in this case, it's justified. In Area 51, there are things out there that want to hunt you. Things that move faster than you can react. And things that won't hesitate to tear you apart if you're not careful. Watch your back. Watch your front. Hell, watch the ceiling. Because in this place, danger doesn't come from just one direction. And remember, if you hear something behind you, it's probably already too late. Tip 10, trust no one. By now you've survived alien goo, stalkers lurking in the shadows, augmented guards, and 100 other things that would have turned most people into dust. But now, you're nearing the end of your adventure in Area 51, if you're lucky enough to call it that. You've dodged death so many times. You're starting to think you've got a shot at making it out alive. But before you let your guard down, there's one last rule you need to remember. Trust no one. Not even yourself. You're deep inside the facility now. The walls feel closer, the air is thicker, and things are getting weirder by the second. That's because Area 51 messes with your head. This place wasn't designed just to contain extraterrestrials, or keep top-secret government projects under wraps. It was built to warp your perception of reality, make you question everything you see, everything you hear, and yes, even everyone you meet. Let me give you an example. Eddie. Eddie broke into Area 51 thinking he'd expose the truth and maybe snap a few pics for his Instagram along the way. He was smart, fast, and had made it farther than most. But he made one fatal mistake. He trusted someone. It happened like this. Eddie had managed to sneak into a lower-level lab, ducking between rooms and avoiding the more obvious dangers. That's when he bumped into a man, tall, wearing a lab coat, and looking just as panicked as Eddie felt. The guy said he was a scientist who'd gotten separated from the rest of the staff when everything went haywire. He offered Eddie a way out. "Follow me," he said. "I know how to get us out of here." Eddie, exhausted and desperate, thought he'd hit the jackpot. A helpful scientist who knows the layout of Area 51? What could go wrong? Well, as it turns out, everything. They made their way through the facility together, the scientist guiding Eddie through the winding corridors. At first, everything seemed fine. They avoided the guards, evaded the stalkers, and found themselves inching closer to what Eddie believed was an exit. But as they moved deeper into the base, Eddie started to notice things. The hallways felt off, like they were looping back on themselves. And the scientist? He seemed too calm, too composed for someone who claimed to be running for his life. That's when Eddie realized it. The man he was following? He wasn't real. Or at least, he wasn't human. Eddie turned to confront him, but by the time he did, the scientist was gone. In his place was something far worse. A shapeshifter. One of the many alien species that had been experimented on deep within the facility. It had been watching Eddie the whole time, mimicking human behavior, leading him into a trap. Before Eddie knew what hit him, the creature lunged. What happened next? Well, let's just say Eddie didn't make it out. He's probably still wandering the endless corridors, except now he looks a little different. A little off. And he's not alone. Area 51 is crawling with these shapeshifters. Beings that can mimic human form, down to the last detail. You think you're talking to a guard? Maybe it's one of them. Think that scientist is offering to help? Maybe he's leading you straight into a containment chamber. Here's the problem. Area 51's most dangerous asset isn't what's locked behind doors. It's the stuff that's walking around pretending to be human. The facility is crawling with creatures that have learned to mimic us, act like us, blend in with us. They'll smile, nod, even hold a conversation. And all the while, they're just waiting for the right moment to strike. It could be anyone. A fellow trespasser, a guard, a scientist, even someone who claims to know a way out. That's the trick of Area 51. You're never sure who, or what, you're really talking to. The worst part? Even if you're sure the person you're with is real, you can't trust yourself. Area 51 messes with your head. The longer you stay here, the harder it becomes to tell what's real and what's not. You'll start seeing things that aren't there. You'll hear voices telling you to turn around, go back, or worse, trust someone who definitely isn't on your side. You'll start to doubt everything, even your own memories. There's something about this place, some kind of energy field or psychic interference, that screws with your perception. You'll look in the mirror and wonder if you're even still you. Take Jessica. She was another one of those conspiracy theorists who thought she could outsmart Area 51. She made it deep into the base, evading every danger the place threw at her. But by the time she reached what she thought was an exit, something had changed. She wasn't the same. Her reflection in the mirror? It moved slower than she did, like it was lagging behind by half a second. Her voice sounded different, too, echoing in a way that didn't quite make sense. And when she tried to leave, she couldn't. She found herself walking in circles, always ending up in the same room, staring at the same reflection that wasn't really hers anymore. Jessica eventually gave up. No one knows what happened to her after that. Maybe she's still in there, trapped in some kind of psychic loop. Or maybe she's become one of the creatures that now haunt the lower levels, pretending to be human, but always just a little off. So, how do you survive this last tip? Simple. Trust no one and question everything. If someone shows up offering help, Ask yourself, how long have they really been here? Do they look too perfect? Are they moving in sync with the world around them? Or do their actions seem just a beat off? If you can't answer these questions, don't follow them. Keep your distance. And whatever you do, don't get too comfortable. This place is designed to mess with you. And the more comfortable you get, the more vulnerable you are to everything lurking in the shadows. Lastly, and most importantly, don't even trust yourself. If you feel like things are slipping, like your reflection isn't quite yours anymore, or like your thoughts don't seem entirely your own, it's time to leave. Immediately. Because the longer you stay in Area 51, the more you become a part of it. And trust me, you don't want to find out what that really means. So, you made it out. Or at least you're still breathing. For now. But before you start celebrating with your friends over tinfoil hats and alien memes, remember, what you've seen, what you've learned, it doesn't stay in Area 51. They're always watching. And if you hear something strange scratching at your door tonight, well, you didn't get it from me. Think you've got what it takes to survive more? You've barely scratched the surface. Subscribe to Cryptid Whisperer for your next crash course in not getting abducted, mutated, or, worse, replaced. Because out there, the truth isn't just stranger than fiction. It's hunting you. See you on the other side.